The recycling bay of the times, eternal dawn times, smelled like failure. At least, that was what everyone said when they talked about the people who worked there. Taman didn't mind the smell anymore. After 3 years of sorting through the colony ship's waste, his nose had stopped noticing it. What he couldn't stop noticing were the looks people gave him when he walked through the main corridors during shift changes. Today was worse than usual. It was assessment day. Taman stood in line with 40 other young men and women, all born on the ship during the 20-year journey from dead Earth. The line moved slowly toward the strength testing machine. One by one, each person gripped the metal bars and pulled. The machine measured everything: grip strength, lifting power, endurance. The numbers appeared on a giant screen for everyone to see. "Next," called the assessment officer, a tall woman named Commander Park. The boy in front of Taman stepped up. His name was Dae-jun, and he was built like the fighters from the old Earth videos. Muscles covered his arms and chest. He gripped the bars and pulled. The machine beeped and flashed. 847 points. The crowd cheered. Dae-jun flexed and grinned at his friends. Next, Taman's stomach twisted. He stepped forward on thin legs that looked like sticks compared to Dae-jun's. His uniform hung loose on his small frame. At 19 years old, he barely looked 16. The genetic enhancements that made other ship-born humans stronger and taller had somehow skipped him. The doctors said it was a random mutation. The other crew members said he was defective. He gripped the bars. They felt cold against his palms. He pulled with everything he had. His arms shook, his back strained. The machine beeped. 124 points. Silence filled the testing bay. Then, someone laughed. Then another. Soon, the whole room echoed with laughter. 124? Dae-jun's voice rose above the others. My little sister scored higher than that. Commander Park's face showed nothing. She marked something on her tablet. Lee Taman. Recycling Division. Score: 124. Rank: last. She looked at him with tired eyes. You're dismissed. Taman walked back through the crowd. People stepped away from him like weakness was contagious. Only one person moved toward him. Yuna pushed through the crowd and grabbed his arm. Ignore them, she said quietly. Yuna had been his friend since childhood. She worked in the ship's garden bay, growing food for the 3,000 people aboard. She was strong, scoring 612 points last year, but she never treated him differently. I'm used to it, Taman said. It was true and not true at the same time. They walked together toward the residential section. The ship's corridors were wide and clean, lit by white lights that never changed. Some children ran past them, playing chase. An old man pushed a cart of medical supplies. Everything looked normal, but Taman felt the weight of every stare. Did you hear? Yuna said. Captain Minho called a meeting. We reached the Vreth trading station. Taman had heard rumors about the Vreth. They were aliens. The first intelligent species humanity had encountered since leaving Earth. The trading station appeared 3 weeks ago on the ship's scanners. Captain Minho had been negotiating ever since. There's going to be a diplomatic mission, Yuna continued. They're selecting the team tomorrow. Only the strongest crew members can go. Of course. Only the strongest. That was how everything worked on the Time's Eternal Dawn asterisk. The strong got the best food, the best quarters, the best assignments. The weak got the recycling bay. Taman said goodbye to Yuna and headed to his shift. The recycling bay was located in the ship's lowest level, where the hum of engines was loudest. 3 other workers were there. 2 older men and 1 woman. They barely spoke to him. He didn't mind. His job was simple. Sort the waste. Metal in 1 container, organic matter in another, plastics in a third. Everything got broken down and reused. Nothing was wasted on a colony ship. Taman had become good at spotting patterns in the waste. He could tell which sections of the ship were using more resources than normal. He could see when something was wrong. Today, Something was wrong. As he sorted through waste from the life support section, he noticed burn marks on several metal components. They weren't normal wear and tear. The edges were too clean, too deliberate. He found 6 pieces with the same damage pattern. Then 8, then 12. His heart started beating faster. Burn marks like these meant someone was tampering with equipment. Life support equipment. The systems that kept 3,000 people breathing. Taemin gathered the damaged pieces and put them in a container. He finished his shift early and went straight to the security office. Lieutenant Choi was on duty. A thick-necked man who had scored 789 on his assessment. "I need to report something," Taemin said. Lieutenant Choi looked up from his screen. His eyes traveled from Taemin's face to his thin arms, to his recycling division badge. "What?" "I found evidence of sabotage in the life support waste. Someone is damaging equipment." Choi's expression didn't change. "You found what?" Sabotage. "Look at these burn marks. They're—" "Let me guess," Choi interrupted. "You want to be a hero? Weak kid from recycling discovers a big conspiracy?" He laughed. "Get out of here. Stop wasting my time." "But the patterns." "Out." Taemin stood there for a moment, the container of damaged parts in his hands. Choi had already turned back to his screen. Taemin left the security office and walked slowly back to his quarters. Nobody would listen. He was just the weak one from recycling. Why would anyone believe him? That night, lying in his narrow bunk, Taemin stared at the ceiling. Somewhere on this ship, someone was breaking things that kept people alive, and nobody would listen to him because he couldn't lift heavy weights. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep. Tomorrow, the diplomatic team would be chosen. Life would continue. And he would go back to the recycling bay, where weak people belonged. The diplomatic shuttle was small and crowded. Taemin sat in the back corner, squeezed between supply crates and emergency equipment. He wasn't part of the diplomatic team. He was there to carry things. Captain Minho stood at the front with Commander Park and 5 of the strongest crew members, including Daejun. They wore their best uniforms, crisp and clean. Taemin wore his recycling division jumpsuit because nobody thought to give him anything else. "Remember," Captain Minho said, his voice deep and commanding. "The Vreth respect strength. Stand tall. Show no weakness. We need this alliance." The Times Eternal Dawn Times was running low on fuel and resources. The Vreth trading station had both. But the Vreth only traded with species they considered worthy. That meant proving humanity was strong. Through the shuttle window, Taemin saw the station for the first time. It was massive, 3 times the size of the Times Eternal Dawn asterisk, built from dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Strange symbols covered its surface. Alien architecture that followed rules human minds didn't understand. The shuttle docked with a heavy clang. The airlock hissed open. Captain Minho led the team forward, shoulders back, chin up. Taemin followed behind, carrying a case of trade goods. The Vreth station's interior was dim and hot. The air smelled like copper and something else, something Taemin couldn't name. The docking bay was enormous, with ceilings that disappeared into darkness above. And there, waiting for them, were the Vreth. Taemin had seen pictures, but pictures didn't capture the reality. The Vreth were huge, at least 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and bronze-colored scales that covered their bodies. Their faces were angular, with large eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. The one in front, clearly the leader, wore armor, decorated with bones and metal. "I am Kael Vor," the Vreth leader said in surprisingly clear human language. "Chief Huntsman of the Storm Clan. Welcome to our station." Captain Minho stepped forward and extended his hand. Kael Vor looked at it for a moment, then gripped it with one of his 4 hands. The captain's face tightened, but he didn't flinch. "Good. Show strength." The 2 leaders began talking about trade agreements. Taemin set down the case and tried to stay invisible. That was easy for him. People rarely noticed him anyway, but someone noticed him. Kael'vor's eyes, glowing amber in the darkness, shifted to look directly at Taemin. The alien's gaze was intense, studying him. Taemin looked away quickly. The meeting continued for an hour. Both sides were polite but careful. The Vreth wanted to see human strength before agreeing to trade. Captain Minho invited them to tour the times. Eternal Dawn. Asterisk. Kael'vor agreed to consider it. Finally, it was time to return to the shuttle. The diplomatic team walked back toward the airlock, satisfied with the first contact. Taemin picked up the trade case and followed. Then he smelled it. That same burning smell from the recycling bay. Electrical fire. His eyes went to the shuttle's control panel. Visible through the airlock window, small wisps of smoke curled from the edges. "Wait," Taemin said. "Something's wrong." Nobody heard him, or they ignored him. "Stop," Taemin shouted. "The panel is damaged. Don't open it." Commander Park turned. "What are you talking about?" "The same burn pattern I reported." "Someone sabotaged the shuttle." Daejun laughed. "Not this again. The weakling sees conspiracies everywhere." Captain Minho frowned, but he pressed the door control anyway. The shuttle door opened. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the shuttle's life support system screamed an alarm and died. The oxygen that should have been circulating into the airlock never came. The diplomatic team stood in the airlock, breathing the last air in the small space. The shuttle's interior showed emergency lights flashing red. The entire system had failed. "Back to the station," Captain Minho ordered. But the outer airlock door had sealed automatically when the inner door opened. Emergency protocol. They were trapped between the broken shuttle and the sealed station door. One by one, the strongest members of humanity's diplomatic team began to collapse. The air was running out. Commander Park fell first, her enhanced body needing more oxygen than normal. Then, the others. Daejun struggled, trying to force open the sealed door. But even his strength meant nothing against reinforced metal. Taemin felt dizzy, his lungs burned. But he had spent 3 years working in the recycling bay, where air quality was always poor. Where weak ventilation meant you learned to do more with less oxygen. His smaller body needed less air to function. He stayed conscious longer than the others. Through the airlock window, he saw Kael'vor and other Vreth watching. They couldn't open the door from outside without venting the entire docking bay to space. Protocol locked everything down during emergencies. Taemin's vision darkened at the edges. His hands shook as he reached for the manual override panel. It was ancient technology. Backup systems from when the shuttle was first built. Most people didn't even know it existed. But Taemin had studied the ship's systems during long nights in the recycling bay. He had nothing else to do. His fingers found the panel behind a maintenance cover. He pulled it open. Inside were manual release levers, mechanical rather than electronic. They required strength to pull, but not muscle strength. Leverage, angles, physics. Taemin positioned his body to use his weight. He pulled. Nothing. He adjusted his angle. Pulled again. The lever moved a fraction of an inch. His vision was going black now. He could hear his heartbeat in his ears. One more pull. He used everything. Every bit of strength his weak body had. The lever clicked. The airlock's outer door hissed and began to open. Air from the Vreth station rushed in. Taemin collapsed. He woke up on the station floor with Kael'vor kneeling beside him. The alien's forearms moved quickly, checking his breathing and pulse. Behind him, Vreth medics were helping the human diplomatic team. Everyone was alive. "You saved them," Kael'vor said. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. The strong ones fell. The weak ones stood. Taemin tried to sit up. His head spun. "Is everyone okay?" "Yes, because of you." Kael'vor tilted his head, studying Taemin the way one might study something unexpected and interesting. "What is your name?" "Lee Taemin." "Taemin." Kael'vor repeated it carefully. You told them the shuttle was damaged. They did not listen. Nobody listens to me. I'm weak. Kyle Vor made a sound that might have been a laugh. Weak? You stood when they fell. You opened a door they could not open. Your words were proven true. He stood, his massive form towering over Taman. Perhaps your people measure strength incorrectly. End quote. Clipped. End quote. Captain Minho approached, still unsteady. Thank you. Taman. You saved our lives. Taman nodded, unsure what to say. Kaelvor spoke again. Captain Minho, I have decided about our trade agreement, but I have one condition. What condition? I want this one. Kaelvor pointed at Taman. To join my hunting party. We leave tomorrow for the Crystal Moon. It is our tradition to hunt with potential allies. The silence that followed was heavy. A Vreth hunt was dangerous, often deadly. It was both honor and test. Captain Minho looked at Taman's thin frame and weak arms. Everyone knew what would happen. Taman would die on that moon. If that is your wish, Captain Minho said slowly, then Taman will join you. Kaelvor's eyes glowed brighter. Good. I am curious to see what true strength looks like. The night before the hunt, Taman couldn't sleep. He lay in his quarters on the Vreth station, staring at the dark ceiling. Every crew member, from the Times, Eternal Dawn Times, thought he was going to die. They didn't say it directly, but he saw it in their eyes. Even Yuna, who believed in him more than anyone, looked worried when she hugged him goodbye. A knock on his door made him jump. It was late, well past midnight by ship time. He opened the door and found Yuna standing there with a bag. I brought you something, she said, pushing past him into the room. She opened the bag and pulled out pieces of equipment. Better boots. They're from the Exploration Division. And this, she held up a small knife. It's not much, but it's sharp. And this is a scanner. It can detect movement within 50 meters. Taman took the items slowly. Yuna, you could get in trouble for taking these. I don't care. Her eyes were fierce. Everyone thinks you're going to die out there. But I know you. You're smart, Taman. You see things others miss. Use that. She grabbed his shoulders. Come back alive. Okay? After she left, Taman organized the equipment. The boots fit better than his old ones. The knife had good weight. The scanner was probably against Vreth hunting rules, but he didn't care. He would use every advantage he could find. Morning came too quickly. Kaelvor met him in the docking bay with 6 other Vreth hunters. They were all massive, covered in scars and armor. They looked at Taman the way someone might look at a small insect. This is the human? One of them asked in their rough language. Taman's translator earpiece converted it to words he could understand. Yes, Kaelvor said. He hunts with us today. They boarded a Vreth hunting vessel, smaller and faster than the diplomatic ships. The flight to the Crystal Moon took 3 hours. During that time, Kaelvor explained the rules. The Crystal Moon has creatures we call shard beasts. They are made of living crystal, hard as diamond, fast as thought. We hunt them for their cores, which power our ships and weapons. The hunt is simple. Track, corner, kill. We return when everyone has taken at least one core, or when someone dies. How many hunters die? Taman asked. Kaelvor's expression was unreadable. On average, 1 in every 3 hunts. The Crystal Moon's surface was beautiful and terrifying. Everything glittered under the light of a distant star. The ground was made of crystalline formations that rang like bells when touched. Forests of crystal trees created mazes of reflecting light. And somewhere in all that beauty, the shard beasts waited. The hunting party split into pairs. Kaelvor stayed with Taman. Stay close, the Vreth said. And stay quiet. Aemon, stay quiet. They moved through the crystal forest. Taemin's new boots barely made sound. His small size let him slip between crystal formations that Kael'vor had to walk around. The alien noticed this but said nothing. After an hour, they found tracks. Long scratches in the crystal ground, gouged deep. Kael'vor knelt and examined them. Recent. Maybe 10 minutes. This way. They followed the trail deeper into the forest. The light changed here, reflecting through layers of crystal until Taemin couldn't tell which way was which. He pulled out Yuna's scanner. Movement registered 60 meters ahead. Then 40. Then 20. It's close, Taemin whispered. Kael'vor raised one hand in a signal. They moved slower. Then Taemin saw it. The shard beast looked like a wolf made of living crystal, each piece shifting and moving independently. Its eyes glowed red from within. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. The beast turned its head toward them. For one frozen moment, nobody moved. Then, it attacked. Kael'vor met it head-on with 2 spears in his forehands. The crystal wolf was fast, but the Vreth chief was faster. They fought in a blur of movement. Crystal claws against metal spears. The sound of the battle echoed through the forest like breaking glass. Taemin pressed against a crystal tree, trying to stay out of the way. Then his scanner beeped. Movement behind them. He turned and saw 2 more shard beasts approaching. They had been flanked. Behind! He shouted. Kael'vor couldn't turn. He was locked in combat with the first beast. The 2 new ones charged directly at Taemin. Every instinct screamed at him to run. But Taemin's mind was already working, analyzing, planning. The beasts were fast in straight lines, but the crystal forest was a maze. He ran, not away, but through a tight gap between 2 crystal formations. His small body fit easily. The beasts tried to follow, but they were too large. They had to go around. Those 5 seconds gave Taemin time to think. He noticed something. The shard beasts weren't hunting randomly. They were defending. Their movements were aggressive, but protective. Why? He looked down. Below his feet, barely visible through the transparent crystal ground, he saw something glowing. Eggs. Or something like eggs. Round crystal spheres with light pulsing inside them. The beasts weren't hunting them. The hunting party had walked into their nesting ground. Taemin ran back toward Kael'vor, dodging between crystal trees. The 2 beasts followed him, focused on the threat to their nest. He led them in a circle, away from the eggs, back to where Kael'vor was finishing his fight with the first beast. They're defending nests, Taemin shouted. We're in their breeding ground. Kael'vor's head snapped toward him. Then the Vreth chief understood. He signaled something in his own language. A retreat call. They ran together, Taemin and Kael'vor, with 3 shard beasts pursuing. Once they crossed out of the nesting area, the beasts stopped chasing. They stood at the boundary, watching, making sure the threat was gone. Kael'vor stood breathing heavily, all 4 arms still gripping his spears. He looked at Taemin. You led them in a circle. Away from the nest. Back to me. I didn't know what else to do. You saved both of us. Kael'vor made a sound that Taemin had learned was Vreth laughter. The strong warrior needs saving by the weak human. This is a story my clan will tell for years. Great Mark. Always 79. They found the rest of the hunting party. 2 other Vreth had been injured. One badly. By wandering into the same nesting areas. Taemin shared what he had learned. The Vreth adjusted their strategy, avoiding the nesting grounds and targeting solitary beasts instead. The hunt was successful. Everyone took their cores. Nobody died. As they returned to the ship, Kael'vor walked beside Taemin. You notice things, the Vreth chief said. You see patterns. You think before acting. These are the marks of a true hunter. But I'm weak, Taemin said. I scored lowest on my ship's assessment. Kael'vor stopped walking. He looked down at Taemin with his glowing amber eyes. Strength is not the absence of weakness. Strength is the wisdom to use what you have. Your people measure only muscle. We Vreth measure more. We measure the mind, the spirit, the will to survive. He placed one of his large hands on Taemin's shoulder. You are not weak, Taemin. You are simply different. That night, back on the Vreth station, Kael Vor held a feast for the successful hunt. The other Vreth hunters celebrated, drinking and eating and telling stories. They included Taemin in their circle, treating him not as the weak human, but as one of the hunting party. At the end of the feast, Kael Vor stood. The room fell silent. He pulled out a knife and cut his palm. Among my people, there is a ritual. When a warrior finds another worthy of trust, worthy of respect, they perform the Bloodmark Brotherhood. Will you accept this honor? He would abound. Taemin's hand shook as he took the knife. He understood what this meant. It was more than friendship. It was family. He cut his own palm, red blood mixing with blue. Kael Vor gripped his hand. From this day, you are my brother. Anyone who harms you, harms me. Anyone who doubts you, doubts me. I claim you as Storm Clan. The Vreth hunters roared their approval, voices shaking the walls. And Taemin, the weak one from the recycling bay, felt something he had never felt before. He felt strong. When Taemin returned to the Time's Eternal Dawn asterisk, everything had changed. People still stared at him, but differently now. The news of the Bloodmark Brotherhood had spread through the ship. The weakest human had become brother to the Vreth chief Huntsman. Captain Minho had no choice but to make Taemin the official liaison to the Vreth clans. Daejun was furious. This is wrong, he shouted in the mess hall, loud enough for everyone to hear. He's weak. He scored 124 points. I scored 847. I should be the liaison. Commander Park, sitting at a nearby table, didn't even look up. The Vreth chose him. We need this alliance. Taemin tried to ignore the anger in Daejun's eyes. He had a new quarters now, bigger than his old one, with a desk and a proper bed. But he still felt like the same person. Still small, still weak by the ship's standards. But now, he had authority. Access to systems he never had before. And he used that access to return to his investigation. The sabotage hadn't stopped. Someone was still breaking things, still pushing the ship towards some kind of disaster. Yuna helped him. She brought him meals and sat with him while he worked, searching through system logs and maintenance reports. She had always been good with plants, understanding how living systems connected. She applied that same thinking to the ship's systems. Look at this, she said one night, pointing at her tablet. The sabotage isn't random. It's targeted. Life support in sections 3, 7, and 12. Navigation backup systems. Emergency power relays. These are all systems we would need if something went wrong. Taemin leaned forward. Someone is making sure that when disaster happens, we can't respond properly. But why? What disaster? Taemin pulled up the ship's navigation charts. The Times, Eternal Dawn Times, was heading toward a planet called Thalros, a world with breathable atmosphere and abundant water. Perfect for a colony. But there was another planet nearby, a harsher world called Karvos. All rock and ice and violent storms. What if someone wants us to crash on Karvos instead? Taemin said slowly. That's insane. Why would anyone want that? Because only the strong would survive there. They looked at each other. It made horrible sense. There was a faction on the ship, people who believed the weak were holding humanity back. They wanted a world that would kill anyone who wasn't strong enough. A world that would cleanse humanity of weakness. We need to find who has access to these systems, Yuna said. Taemin traced the access codes through layers of security. It took 3 days. The codes were hidden, bounced through fake accounts, masked behind maintenance protocols. But finally, he found the source. The primary access came from a lieutenant's account. Lieutenant Choi Daejun. Taemin's blood went cold. Daejun, the strongest fighter on the ship. the one who hated him most, the one who wanted to be the Vreth liaison. "We have to tell Captain Minho," Yuna said. They went together to the captain's quarters. It was late, but this couldn't wait. Captain Minho listened to their evidence, his face growing darker with each detail. "Are you certain?" he asked. "The codes are his," Taman said. "And look at the pattern. The sabotage increased after he was passed over for liaison. He's escalating. This is serious enough for arrest." Captain Minho stood. "I'll have security take him into custody." But when security went to Daejun's quarters, he was gone. The search began immediately. The Times, Eternal Dawn Times, wasn't that large. There were only so many places to hide. They found him 2 hours later in the engineering section, working at a console. "Step away from the console," Commander Park ordered, her weapon drawn. Daejun turned slowly. He looked calm, almost peaceful. "It's already done. I activated the final protocol 10 minutes ago." "What protocol?" Captain Minho demanded. He and Taman had arrived with the security team, the one that will save humanity. Daejun smiled. "In 6 hours, the reactor will cascade. We'll lose primary power and navigation. The ship will be pulled into Karvos's gravity well. We'll crash there instead of landing on Thalros. You'll kill thousands of people," Yuna said, her voice shaking. "I'll kill the weak. The strong will survive. And humanity will be better for it." Daejun looked directly at Taman. "You're the perfect example of why this is necessary. You're weak, useless, and yet they made you important because you impressed some aliens. You should have died in the recycling bay. You should have died on that hunt, but you keep surviving, and that gives other weak people hope." False hope. Taman felt something cold settle in his chest. "You sabotaged the diplomatic shuttle too. You tried to kill Captain Minho. And the others." "I tried to kill you," Daejun corrected. "The others were acceptable losses. But you survived that too." He shook his head. "It doesn't matter now. The reactor can't be stopped. Not through the computer systems. I made sure of that." Captain Minho grabbed him. "Then you'll manually shut it down. The access tunnel is too small for enhanced humans. You can't reach the manual controls." Daejun laughed. "I thought of everything." The engineering team confirmed it. The reactor was cascading, building toward critical failure. The only way to stop it was through manual override, deep in the reactor core. But the access tunnel had collapsed years ago and been replaced with emergency maintenance tubes. Tubes that were only 18 inches wide. No enhanced human could fit. Their larger, stronger bodies were too big. Commander Park looked at the schematics. "We need someone small." Everyone turned to look at Taman. "No," Yuna said immediately. "The radiation levels will kill him. We calculate 20 minutes before lethal exposure." An engineer said quietly. "Maybe less." "How long to reach the manual override?" Captain Minho asked. 15 minutes. If everything goes perfectly." Taman stepped forward. "I'll do it." "Taman, no." Yuna grabbed his arm. "There has to be another way." "There isn't." He looked at her. At Captain Minho. At all the people on this ship. 3,000 people will die if I don't. That's not a choice. That's just math. Daejun, held by security, stared at him. "You're going to die trying to save people who think you're worthless." "Maybe," Taman said. "But at least I won't die being the kind of person who thinks strength is the only thing that matters." Security took Daejun away. The engineering team prepared Taman for the reactor tunnel. They gave him a radiation suit that would buy him maybe 5 extra minutes. They gave him a communication headset so Yuna could guide him through the process. They gave him the tools he would need. They didn't give him false hope. Everyone knew what would happen. He would stop the reactor cascade. And then, he would die from radiation poisoning. Captain Minho pulled him aside before he entered the tunnel. "I was wrong about you. I measured you by the wrong standard. I'm sorry." "It's okay," Taman said, and he meant it. Yuna hugged him. She was crying. "You're the strongest person I've ever known." "I'm really not," he said. "I'm just the right size for a small tunnel." But as he entered the reactor core, crawling through the narrow maintenance tube with radiation counters clicking faster and faster, Taman thought about Kyle Vor's words. Strength is the wisdom to use what you have. Maybe dying to save 3,000 people was its own kind of strength. The tunnel was hot and dark and barely wide enough for his body. His weak, small, worthless body. The body that fit where stronger bodies could not. Taman crawled forward into the burning heart of the ship. The heat inside the reactor tunnel was unbearable. Taman's radiation suit helped, but sweat still poured down his face. The suit's internal display showed numbers climbing, radiation exposure increasing, time remaining decreasing. He had been crawling for 8 minutes. Left at the next junction, Yuna's voice crackled through his headset. She was in the engineering bay, watching his progress through sensors. Then, straight for 30 meters. "Okay," Taman said. His voice sounded strange in his own ears. Too calm. Maybe this was what accepting death felt like. The tunnel walls glowed with heat. Through gaps in the metal, he could see the reactor core itself, a swirling mass of blue-white energy, beautiful and deadly. The crackling sound of radiation filled his ears. Or maybe that was just his radiation counter. It was clicking so fast now it sounded like static. "How much time?" he asked. Yuna's pause told him everything. 14 minutes since you entered. You're doing great. 14 minutes. That meant he had maybe 6 minutes before the radiation killed him. And he still hadn't reached the manual override. But he kept crawling. What else could he do? 3,000 people were counting on him. Yuna was counting on him. Even Captain Minho, who had measured him by strength alone, was counting on him now. "I see it," Taman said. Ahead, the tunnel opened into a small chamber. In the center stood a control panel, ancient and mechanical. This was the manual override. Built when the ship was constructed, meant as a last resort. Nobody had needed it in 20 years. Until now. Taman pulled himself into the chamber. His hands were shaking. He couldn't tell if it was fear or radiation sickness. Probably both. "I'm at the controls," he said. "Good. Now listen carefully." Yuna's voice was steady, professional. She was keeping herself together for him. "You need to reroute the coolant flow manually. There are 4 main valves. Turn them in sequence. Red, blue, green, yellow. Then pull the master reset lever." Taman looked at the panel. It was old, covered in dust and wear. Some of the labels had faded, but he could see the valves. The problem was immediately obvious. The blue valve was broken. The handle had snapped off, leaving just a metal rod. "The blue valve is broken," he said. Silence on the other end. Then, "Can you turn the rod?" Taman tried. It didn't move. He tried harder. Nothing. The rod was rusted solid, fused in place by 20 years of heat and neglect. His vision was starting to blur. The radiation was cooking him from the inside. He had maybe 3 minutes left. The ship had less than 2 hours before reactor breach. Think. He was good at thinking. That was his strength, Kael'vor had said. See patterns. Find solutions. Taman looked around the chamber. Old tools left by maintenance crews. Pieces of cable. Broken components. The same kind of junk he sorted every day in the recycling bay. And suddenly, he understood why he had spent 3 years in that awful place. He had been training for this moment, without knowing it. He grabbed a piece of cable and a metal rod. He wrapped the cable around the broken valve stem, creating a makeshift handle. Then, he used the rod as leverage, threading it through the cable loop. Physics, angles, leverage, the same principles he used to open the airlock on the Vreth station. "I'm trying something," he said. He pulled. The cable bit into the rust. He adjusted his angle, using his body weight. Pulled again. The valve moved. Just a fraction. But it moved. It's working. Yuna's voice broke with relief. Taemin kept pulling. Each tiny movement took all his strength. His weak, worthless strength. But weak was enough, when you knew how to use it. The valve turned. Once. Twice. 3 times. Blue valve complete, he gasped. Green next. Then yellow. His hands were going numb. That was bad. Radiation sickness was accelerating. He turned the green valve. Then yellow. Each movement took longer than the last. His body was shutting down. Now the master reset lever, Yuna said. It's the large one on the right. Pull it down. Taemin looked at the lever. It was big, designed for an engineer in a protective suit with full strength. He could barely feel his hands anymore. How was he supposed to pull it? He thought of Daejun. Probably sitting in a cell right now. Certain that Taemin would fail. He thought of all the people who had called him weak, worthless, defective. He thought of HFY War, who had called him brother. Taemin grabbed the lever with both hands. He pulled. Nothing. He braced his feet against the wall and pulled again. The lever moved down 1 inch. Then stopped. I can't, he whispered. I'm not strong enough. Yes, you are, Yuna said. Her voice was fierce. You're the strongest person I know. Not because of your muscles. Because you keep fighting. Because you never give up. Now, pull that lever. Taemin screamed and pulled. Every muscle in his weak body strained. The lever moved. 2 inches. 3. 4. Then, it clicked into place. The reactor's roar changed pitch. The blue-white energy began to stabilize. The cascade was stopping. You did it! Yuna was crying now. Taemin, you did it! The reactor is stable. Taemin collapsed against the wall. He couldn't move anymore. His radiation counter was just one long, continuous tone. Lethal exposure. He was dead. He just hadn't stopped breathing yet. Can't move, he said. His voice was faint. Hold on. We're coming for you. Too far. Too much radiation. Taemin, please. Hold on. Tell HFY War, Taemin whispered. Tell him I tried to be strong. Then he heard something. A roar that shook the tunnel. A voice he recognized. Brother. HFY War came through the tunnel like a storm. The Vreth chief had boarded the Time's Eternal Dawn times when he heard about the crisis. His 4 arms pulled him through spaces that should have been too small. He was wearing an alien radiation suit, one that barely fit the tunnels. He reached Taemin and gathered him up. You can't, Taemin tried to say. The radiation will kill you too. Vreth biology is different. Our cells regenerate faster. We can survive higher doses. HFY War was already moving, carrying Taemin back through the tunnel. Besides, would you leave me to die? No. So I do not leave you. They emerged from the tunnel into the engineering bay. Medical teams were waiting. But they looked at Taemin, and their faces told the truth. Too much exposure. Nothing they could do. Captain Minho approached. Thank you, Taemin. You saved us all. Taemin tried to respond, but couldn't. His body was failing. HFY War roared something in his own language. Other Vreth had arrived. Carrying equipment. Our medical technology. It can save him. But it will change him. What do you mean? Yuna asked. We can introduce Vreth cellular regeneration into his body. He will heal from the radiation. But his DNA will be altered. He will be part human, part Vreth. He will never be fully human again. Everyone looked at Taemin. He could barely keep his eyes open. Change him? He had been called defective, broken, worthless his whole life. What did it matter if he changed? He nodded. Once. It was enough. The Vreth medics worked quickly. They injected something into Taemin's veins. It burned like fire, then like ice, then like nothing he had ever felt before. He screamed. Then everything went black. He woke up 3 days later. Yuna was sitting beside his bed, holding his hand. When she saw his eyes open, she started crying. "Hey," he said. His voice was rough but strong. "You're alive. You're actually alive." Taemin looked at his arms. His skin had changed slightly. It had a faint bronze tint now, like Vreath's scales but softer. His hands were still small, still weak-looking, but when he flexed them, he felt different. Stronger, not like Daejun's strength. Different. Better. "How do you feel?" Yuna asked. "Strange, good, alive." Over the next week, Taemin learned about his new body. The Vreth regeneration meant he healed faster. His muscles were still small, but they were more efficient now. His mind was sharper. He could think longer without getting tired. He could see patterns even more clearly than before. Captain Minho came to see him. "I owe you everything. The whole ship owes you. I'm reforming our merit system. Strength will no longer be the only measure of worth." "Thank you," Taemin said. "But I don't want to be special because I saved everyone. I want to be valued because everyone has value. Weak or strong." The captain nodded slowly. "You're right. We'll do better." Daejun was put on trial and exiled to the brig for the rest of the journey. His followers, a group of about 50 people, were given the same choice: accept the new way or be isolated. Most chose to accept. Taemin became the chief cultural ambassador to the Vreth clans. It was a real position now, not just a title. He worked with Kael'vor to build an alliance between humans and Vreth. Ships from both species traveled together toward Thalros. 1 month later, Kael'vor held a ceremony on the Vreth flagship. Representatives from both species attended. The Vreth chief stood before everyone and spoke. "I chose Taemin as my brother not despite his weakness, but because he showed me true strength. The strength to survive when survival seemed impossible. The strength to solve problems others could not. The strength to sacrifice himself for others. The strength to be small in a world that demands you be large." He placed one of his 4 hands on Taemin's shoulder. "Humans, you measure yourselves incorrectly. You look for strength in the wrong places. True strength lives in the mind, in the heart, in the spirit. My brother has taught me this. Perhaps he can teach you as well." After the ceremony, Taemin stood on the observation deck with Yuna, looking at the stars ahead. Somewhere out there was Thalros, their new home. "Do you ever regret it?" Yuna asked. "Being changed? Not being fully human anymore?" Taemin thought about it. He looked at his hands. Still small. Still the same hands that scored 124 points on the strength test. But different now. Better now. "No," he said finally. "I was never fully human by their standards anyway. I was always too weak, too small, too different. Now, I'm just different in a new way. And that's okay." "You're starting classes next week, right? Teaching the Vreth philosophy?" "Yeah. 40 people signed up. Can you believe it? 40 people want to learn how to be weak properly." Yuna laughed. "You're not teaching them to be weak. You're teaching them to be strong in different ways. Maybe that's the same thing." They stood together, watching the stars, flying toward a future where strength meant more than muscle, where worth meant more than numbers on a test, where being different wasn't the same as being defective. Behind them, Kael'vor joined them at the window. The Vreth chief stood beside his brother, and together they watched humanity's new home grow larger in the darkness. "What do you think?" Kael'vor asked. "Will your people learn?" Taemin looked at the ship full of humans, some of whom still feared him, some of whom now respected him, some of whom were starting to understand. He thought about the journey ahead, the challenges to come, the work still to be done. "Some will," he said, "some won't. But we'll try. That's all anyone can do. We try." Kael'vor made his laughing sound. "Spoken like a true warrior, brother." And Taemin smiled, because he finally understood. He had always been a warrior, He had always been strong. He had just been fighting the wrong battles, trying to win games where the rules were designed to make him lose. Now he was changing the rules. And that, he realized, was the strongest thing anyone could do.